This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Maximus. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, the time could be right for an extreme cyber makeover for the whole federal government.
Is it time to rethink the paradigm here and how we actually attack this from a federal government approach? And I would argue it is.
Eddie Poole, the acting CIO at VA, on FedGov Today in just a moment. Uniting program strategy, advanced technology, process, and execution for a more efficient government. That's Maximus. Every program, every service, every time. That's innovation forward. Learn more at maximus.com/federal. 29 legacy systems are out of business at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Legacy systems are only one aspect of the work ahead for the VA Office of Information and Technology. Eddie Poole's Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary, Acting Assistant Secretary, and CIO at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Eddie, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much for joining me today. Obviously, the IT operation of VA is enormous and complex. What did you do when you first became the CIO and first got in there to get the lay of the land and to understand the task that was ahead of you? Welcome, Eddie.
Yeah, thank you, Francis, and thank you for having me today. That's a great first question to maybe start us off. So, fortunately for myself and for the department, I was here before the administration took over. I've been here for quite some time, and also a veteran myself. I know some of the pain points of the organization from the inside perspective as well as from an outside user perspective. So when I was first asked to become acting CIO by the administration, really the first thing I did is look at, okay, where's the administration going? What are the top priorities and objectives of the Trump administration and Secretary Collins, and really begin positioning and organizing the organization to be able to best meet those objectives. As an example, you've heard the Secretary talk a lot about bringing VA to the veteran versus the veteran trying to have to navigate, find the VA. And where OINT can facilitate that is really the rich data that we have, the automation, AI, different types of things we can bring to the table to really enable the veterans to more easily access the benefits that they've earned and deserved. Versus the former navigation, trying to find your way to the prize, if you will. And really looking at our organizational structures. What I observed was that over time we became very administratively heavy, very siloed in some of the enterprise level services that we could benefit at the department level. And so I began focusing on returning the IT organization really more to a world-class IT delivery organization, and really freeing up resources, investments, where things are not necessarily operational in nature, but really align my strategy, my vision, to bring this to a more operational construct. Where again, what we do here is first and foremost deliver IT services to enable the department's objectives.
In that move to go in a more operational direction, what did you have to shift or move or transform, or what are you in the process of doing in those different ways to achieve that vision, Eddie?
Yeah, great question. We looked at a lot of things. We looked at, where we were doing things internal to OINT as an organization, and if there were shared services or department level resources and functions that could consume those services or otherwise provide those services to us. So we went through that and looked at that from an administration perspective, from an HR perspective, and really realized we were missing an opportunity to invest more of our IT resources into the IT products and services and shift those administrative functions over to the department level and really rely on the department as a customer for those services. And so that was really the charge across all of our non-operational activities and rationalizing, hey, is this something that we need to do differently, uniquely, or is this something that we can get either through a shared service or otherwise at a higher level to free up resources and focus our organization on mission delivery.
What's your sense of the IT plants at VHA, VBA, cemeteries, and how that all connects together? What level of visibility do you have into where they are and where you would like them to be on the journey that you just described?
Yeah, that has been I think an organizational objective for quite some time. I know it has been really in my entire tenure here. With this administration, we have an opportunity never before presented, and really focusing on what we do at a standardized technology, tools, processes, workflows kind of perspective. And so at the department level, VHA, VBA, et cetera, their IT priorities really are now aligned to the overall IT objectives on how we can bring those services to the department in standardized ways. A good example, we are actively working on consolidating a lot of our contact center operations across the organization. And frankly, from an IT perspective, it's not an overly difficult endeavor. We can automate and deploy services on just about any platform these days. It's about standardizing the workflow, the business processes, and the outcomes that we're after. And that's really where the real benefit is. So I think the key difference here is that we were able to really join our business partners as that enabling partner, make sure they understand what we can do with our technology, and then leverage that to bring standardized processes and workflows for much, much improved outcomes to the veteran community.
A couple of the things that you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, Eddie, that you view as important tools. You mentioned AI. Everybody, of course, is talking about AI and the possibilities. It's something that VA has been experimenting with and testing and piloting for a long time now. Automation is one that doesn't get as much attention. It's not as sexy as AI. I get that. What areas do you think are most ripe for automation across the department? And what's your thought about how to get VA from where they are today to where you want to be with automation?
Like VA, like many organizations and really across industry over the decades of technology evolutions, there's been a tendency to automate basically your paper process, right? So let's use a computer to do the same thing that you did on paper and computerize it. Obviously, in the early days, that might have been a logical thing to do. But today, you really have to step back and say, what is the paper process for anyway? What are the things that we can automate? We can decision, we can dispense of without necessarily having human intervention. And so when I look at the data that we often collect from the veteran community for different products and services and things that the veterans are accessing, oftentimes we ask them for the same information repeatedly, right? And so now it's about centralizing access to that information, really evaluating to the extent we can, what do we really need to ask an individual, right, that's been in the VA system, seeking a new benefit or trying thing that they haven't tried before, and should we have them go through those processes, right? Or do we have enough data to automatically conclude their eligibility and auto-adjudicate those decisions? And so it really is a game-changing perspective right now, looking at everything that we do and saying, hey, do we have the data? Do we have the automation, the technology to really remove as much manual interaction from the veteran community or from even our claims processors, our benefits folks, anyone who is involved in these processes? To what extent can we streamline and simplify those processes, simplify the data, and standardize on the data that we use, and just simply make it a better experience, quicker experience for the veteran? So,
I imagine then the Veterans Experience Office has been an important partner to you to help you work through that process. VA has one of the, I think they were one of the first customer experience oriented organizations all across the government. So they've been at it for a long time, right?
Yeah, I know the Veterans Experience Office at VA does do a lot by way of collecting that feedback from the veteran community. There's a lot of survey information, a lot of other stuff. We are even looking at how we can help automate and facilitate the ways in which we collect that data from the veteran directly through the products and services that we provide. And again, make sure that we are planning our future based on real feedback and direction and input from the veteran community. And another thing that we've done internally is we began really leveraging the veterans within our workforce to try before you buy kind of concept. So when we have things in development, we have things in testing, we really are looking at leveraging our own veteran workforce to provide some feedback and input on those new tools and technologies. And again, if it'll work for for the broader veteran community. It has to work for the veterans, that have access to it from a developer. So it's a pretty great concept.
Before we went on the air, you used a term talking about cyber that I've heard used in the Defense Department before, but I'm not sure I've heard it in a civilian agency, and that's cyber dominance. What's that term mean to you in the context of serving veterans at VA, Eddie?
Yeah, thank you for that one. Cyber dominance, when I testified before the House Veterans Affairs Committee, talking about the overall priorities of the organization, I did reference cyber dominance, and that has really stuck in terms of what our strategy how we define our strategy in the cyber defense space. Basically, what I mean by that is traditionally at VA, we have spent a lot of energy and resources on compliance-based approaches to cybersecurity, meaning we spend a lot of time looking at annual audits. Is a paper filled out correctly? Are the I's dotted, T's crossed, et cetera, et cetera? And we're spending a lot of resources, a lot of money on those activities. Those don't do a significant amount in terms of protecting the actual attack surfaces, the threat landscape, and the real fight day-to-day on the cybersecurity warfront. So we're pivoting to really focusing all of our energy and resources on those risk-based approach, those real-time activities in the cyber security world to really bring a lot more value in terms of what we're bringing to the organization. And through that, we're going to significantly harden our infrastructure, and we're going to make the department much more protected and secure than it's ever been before.
The idea there makes perfect sense to me, Eddie, because CIOs over the 20 years or so that I've been talking to federal CIOs tell me both on and off the record all the time about the challenge of balancing compliance with tactical success. And it sounds to me that's what you're trying to get after there. You're still going to want to be FISBA compliant. You're still going to want to hit all of those marks that you're required to legally, while at the same time also being able to confidently say our system is as hardened and secure as we can possibly know to make it. Am I on the right track there?
Absolutely. There are some legislatively required, statutorily required activities that do have to continue. Those are things that we will continue. But we will definitely balance our investment and our resources on what's bringing the best bang for the buck to the department in terms of our overall cybersecurity posture. So on that note, I am working with my colleagues across government through the Federal CIO Council and otherwise to really begin having this conversation, right? I mean, is it time to rethink the paradigm here and how we actually attack this from a federal government approach? And I would argue it is. It's something that we have to get back to basics in terms of where we spend our energy, where we spend our time, where we invest more. Is it more important to evolve a new evolution of metrics tracking for compliance-based approaches to auditing, or should we shift most of our energy and efforts to implementing zero trust architecture? I think the answer to that question should be quite clear, but I'm trying to drive that from an enterprise perspective so people understand this is really how you do it. And this is how we get the best bang for our buck and make sure, again, that what we're doing is really doing the best we can to protect veterans' data, veterans' systems, and the sacred information that we're trusted to protect.
You have an advantage, I think, over a lot of CIOs that have come into government over the last number of years in that, I'm looking at your list of titles that you held at VA before you became the acting CIO, and you have a long record of service at that agency. How does that help you in what you're doing now that you kind of have an idea of where the bodies are buried, which a lot of CIOs coming into government don't?
Yeah, that does really does bring a big advantage. You get I've had the opportunity over my career to really see problems from a multitude of perspectives, right? And be able to walk the walk from various angles, various positions, and really bring it all together in terms of how do we balance, the funding aspects of things, for example, the funding constraints with what we're going to get from an activity or a project or effort to really bring a greater cybersecurity capability to the table. What does that do from a networking perspective? What's the integration capabilities? How is it going to fit with our very complex enterprise architecture? My journey at VA has given me not just a perspective, but I've had to stand with a shovel in my hand in most of those areas, right? And so I do know very much what the overall strategy should look like in order to bring us the best outcomes, right? And so that has helped me a tremendous amount, and I'm thankful for that. I know it was maybe grumbling through those journeys, but certainly now I can say that it's kind of like the Allstate Farm. I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two.
Yeah.
Right? So it does help me where I'm at today. For sure.
You mentioned modernization and transformation at the beginning of the conversation, and I think everybody understands one of the biggest projects that you're working through is the modernization of the electronic health record system. There are others. What are the big rocks that you want to move regarding modernization in the time that you have in the job that you're in now, Eddie?
Sure. Well, the good news is over the last several years, we've actually worked quite a bit in standardizing on our enterprise platforms, products, and tools, really setting the foundation for where we can go next. And where we're going next, again, is going back to the business side of the equation and talking about how we can standardize workflows, processes, activities in terms of how the business is achieving their outcomes on those enterprise standard tool sets and platforms. Again, I mentioned previously the contact center modernization activities. This is the same. This holds true across the board for many of our tools and products. Now we're at the point where the value proposition is really making sure the business understands now is the time. We have matured to the point that we can now deliver these things in a world-class way with the redundancy, reliability, the security, everything that we need to do that in a very cost-effective manner and maintain one or two enterprise capabilities or platforms for a number of capabilities versus siloed, legacy, aging, antiquated, sprawling enterprise of things out there that are very costly to maintain, very difficult to secure, and require a tremendous amount of resources to manage. So it is kind of the golden age in terms of the opportunity here from a technology delivery perspective, as well as what we can do from a business delivery, business outcomes perspective. So it's a very exciting time to be in this world.
Eddie, there's a lot more I'd like to cover. We're out of time, so I'll have to ask you to come back, but I appreciate you joining me today very, very much.
Yeah, you absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
You can read more about the VA's IT operations on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. The General Services Administration has more than a dozen deals now for lower prices on products and services through its OneGov initiative. Robert Costello, the Chief Information Officer at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, says there's a lot for CIOs to like about OneGov. He'll tell you what on the next FedGov Today TV. You can watch the debut on ABC7 in Washington and on the FedGov Today YouTube channel at 10:30 Sunday morning. If you miss the debut, you can watch any time at fedgovtoday.com and on YouTube. The next FedGov Today podcast is coming Thursday. The director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency says today is the golden age of GeoInt. Vice Admiral Frank Whitworth was my guest for a plenary session at the Intelligence and National Security Summit. You can listen to part one of that conversation on the FedGov Today podcast coming Thursday. To make sure you don't miss it, follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows, and you can always listen on demand at fedgovtoday.com. I'm Francis Rose. I'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening.